Imagine pouring $50,000 of your hard-earned life savings into a brand new car. You trust the badge on the hood. It represents a century-old American legacy. But then you wake up one morning, turn on the news, and find out the brand you just bought has been entirely erased from existence by men in expensive suits. Your warranty? A nightmare to enforce. Your resale value? Tanked by 40% overnight. This isn't a hypothetical horror story. If you're driving an American car right now, you might be sitting behind the wheel of a ticking financial time bomb. General Motors didn't just lose their most iconic brands to a bad economy, they systematically murdered them in cold blood, all to feed a corporate machine run by ruthless bean counters who care more about quarterly spreadsheets than the people actually buying their cars. Today, we are exposing the terrifying truth behind the 5 beloved car brands GM sent to the graveyard. And you absolutely need to stick around for the number 1 spot on this list, because the brand at number 1 was actually making a profit, building the best cars in its history, and yet an insider leak reveals it was brutally executed on a boardroom table to satisfy a government ultimatum. If you plan on giving GM your money anytime soon, you cannot afford to ignore this. Let's start the countdown. The hype. Number 5. Hummer. Born from the sands of Operation Desert Storm, the Hummer wasn't just a vehicle. It was a rolling declaration of American invincibility. When the AOMSIM General partnered with GM to bring these behemoths to the civilian market, the hype was unprecedented. You had Hollywood elite and suburban dads alike clamoring for the H2 and H3. It was the ultimate status symbol of the early 2000s, unapologetic, massive, and dominating the road. The crash. But the executives in the Renaissance Center were blinded by their own arrogance. They completely ignored the shifting tides of the global economy. When gas prices violently spiked to $4 a gallon in 2008, driving a 3-ton brick that got 10 miles to the gallon suddenly went from a status symbol to a financial liability. GM's accountants panicked. Instead of innovating or pivoting the brand earlier when warning signs flashed, they let Hummer bleed out. During the 2009 bankruptcy, GM tried desperately to sell Hummer off to a heavy machinery company in China. When the Chinese government blocked the deal, GM's board didn't hesitate. They pulled the plug, instantly turning thousands of dealerships into ghost towns. The aftermath. Who paid the price? The loyal owners. You could go on Hummer forums back in 2010 and read hundreds of heartbreaking stories. The guys who took out massive loans for an H2 suddenly found their vehicles were completely unsellable.
No, it's not enough.
Dealerships wouldn't take
Please,
them as
it's a good
trade-ins.
car.
They were
I'm
stuck
sorry,
with
no
massive
deal.
negative equity, literally trapped by a truck nobody wanted. And the ultimate insult? Decades later, GM resurrects the Hummer name as an overpriced $100,000 electric vehicle. A complete slap in the face to the blue-collar, V8-loving enthusiasts who built the brand's legacy in the first place. The hype. Number 4. Saab. For decades, Saab was the quirky, brilliant crown jewel of Swedish engineering. Born from jets, they built cars for architects, professors, and people who valued safety and turbocharged innovation over flashy chrome. They had a cult following that rivaled any brand on earth. The crash.
The projections are
General
clear.
Motors bought
We
them,
proceed.
and this is
Agreed.
where the
Eliminate the
corporate greed
obstacles. The
truly
risks
takes a
are
dark
acceptable.
turn. GM's accountants looked at Saab's meticulous, expensive engineering process and scoffed. They didn't want to fund Swedish innovation. They just wanted the premium badge. So, they forced Saab engineers to use
joke,
cheap,
right?
generic GM
It's what
parts.
the budget allows.
They took a standard
It's only the
Chevrolet
last
Malibu chassis, slapped a Saab badge on it, and tried to sell it as European luxury. True story from the SaabNet forums. Owners who spent $40,000 on a brand new Saab 9.3 were furious when the interior dashboard buttons started peeling off within a year, revealing cheap white plastic underneath. It was pure GM cost cutting. They diluted the brand until it meant absolutely nothing. The aftermath. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, GM tossed Saab out of the moving car like dead weight. They blocked deals that could have saved the company simply because they didn't want a competitor getting their hands on GM's shared intellectual property. They let Saab die. Today, finding proprietary parts for a late model Saab is a scavenger hunt. Owners were left stranded by a parent company that fundamentally never understood them, proving that when Wall Street accountants take over the drafting table, the consumer always loses. The hype. Number 3 is a story of pure internal sabotage. Saturn. GM launched Saturn in the 1990s as a different kind of company, a different kind of car. It was a massive billion-dollar gamble to fight off Honda and Toyota, and it worked. Saturn had dent-resistant plastic panels, clear no-haggle pricing, and a fiercely loyal customer base. People loved Saturn so much they would spend their summer vacations traveling to the factory in Spring Hill, Tennessee, in just for a massive owner's barbecue. It was a family. The crash. But behind closed doors in Detroit, the executives running Chevrolet and Pontiac were seething with jealousy. Saturn was getting all the media love and development money. So, the old guard at GM orchestrated a slow, deliberate assassination. They intentionally starved Saturn of research and development funds for years. Instead of giving them new, innovative vehicles, the bean counters forced Saturn to sell rebadged in the subpar GM garbage. The breaking point for the community, the Saturn Relay. It was literally just a terrible Chevrolet minivan with a Saturn logo glued to the front. The aftermath. They destroyed the very soul of the company. When GM finally went bankrupt, they abandoned Saturn entirely. Hundreds of independent family-owned Saturn dealerships were wiped out in a matter of months. Yet generations of family businesses were bankrupted because GM executives were too busy fighting internal turf wars to care about the Americans selling their cars. If you bought a Saturn in 2008, thinking you were part of the family, GM made it brutally clear. You were just a number on a spreadsheet they couldn't balance. The hype. Number 2, Oldsmobile. This wasn't just a car brand, it was an American institution. Founded in 1897, Oldsmobile brought us the fully automatic transmission and the legendary Rocket V8. They essentially birthed the American muscle car era. By the 1970s, the Oldsmobile Cutlass was the absolute best-selling car in the United States. The crash. So how does a brand that dominant just vanish? Arrogance and the deadly sin of badge engineering. In the 1980s, GM executives decided that engineering unique cars was too expensive. This led to one of the biggest betrayals in auto history. Consumers were buying premium Oldsmobiles, paying top dollar for that legendary Olds V8 engine. But when owners took their cars to independent mechanics for service, they made a sickening discovery. GM had secretly stuffed cheaper Chevrolet engines into their Oldsmobiles on the assembly line to save a few bucks. The public was outraged. Lawsuits flew. The trust was irreparably broken. The aftermath. Instead of fixing the culture, GM just gave up. In December 2000, they shockingly announced the termination of a 107-year-old brand. It was a massive wake-up call to the American public. Oldsmobile's death proved that no matter how much history a brand has, no matter how many millions of cars they've sold, if corporate accountants decide the profit margins aren't fat enough, they will slit the throat of an American icon without blinking. The hype, and now the climax. Number 1, the darkest, most infuriating corporate execution in automotive history. Pontiac. Pontiac was the excitement division. The GTO, the Firebird, the Trans Am. They built cars with swagger, cars that made noise and burned rubber. But what makes Pontiac's death so tragic is that right before they were killed, they were actually making a massive comeback. They had just released the G8, a rear-wheel drive V8 powered masterpiece that critics were calling the American BMW. The crash. Here's the dark truth that GM tried to bury. In 2009, GM was out of money and begging the US government for a bailout. The Obama administration's Auto Task Force run by Wall Street bankers who knew absolutely nothing about car culture, looked at GM's portfolio and gave them an ultimatum: trim the fat or we don't sign the check. According to insider leaks from former GM executives, the meetings were brutal. Pontiac was actually hitting its internal targets. The G8 was selling, but the government task force demanded a blood sacrifice. They forced GM to choose between Buick and Pontiac. The accountants ran the numbers. Buick was selling massively in China. Pontiac was only loved in America. For a multinational corporation, the choice was purely mathematical. A former GM executive anonymously leaked that grown men wept in that boardroom when the decision was made. They knew they were killing the soul of the company. The aftermath. They announced Pontiac's death, and the used market went insane. People realized these were the last true American muscle cars of their kind. G8S and GTOs skyrocketed in value, but for the everyday buyer, complete devastation. Warranties were shuffled to Chevy dealers who didn't want to service them. A massive piece of American culture was erased, not because they made bad cars, but because a group of men who have never changed their own oil decided that your passion wasn't profitable enough. General Motors survived, but they left a trail of broken promises, bankrupted dealerships, and furious owners in their wake. They proved that in the modern corporate world, heritage means absolutely nothing. So I have to ask you, look at the landscape today. Look at the struggling brands right now. Neil, which American car brand do you think the corporate accountants are secretly planning to murder next? Chrysler? Dodge? Let me know your predictions in the comments below, because history is absolutely going to repeat itself. Hit that subscribe button if you want the unfiltered truth about the auto industry. Don't let them take you for a ride. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.